Attack power is one of the most misleading stats in the game. If this is what you've been building your character around, your character is probably hitting for a lot less damage than it actually could be. Wanderers, we're going to cover 5 endgame tips, including why attack power is really bad, that will get you to doing billions and billions of damage. We're going to talk about attack power now, and I'm going to show you some examples of why this stat should not be used whatsoever. If we were to look at what attack power is built off of, this is an evaluation of the damage you deal. Well, that is actually false. We'll talk about exactly why so you can see it. Based on your offensive stats, scaled with your current wielded weapons' damage and attack speed. So it's going to take all of your offensive stats, and then it's going to calculate that based on your wielded weapons. For the barbarian, you can wield different weapons, and your attack speed of that weapon. So looking at your stat line here, you can pull up and you can see all of the different offensive stats that you have all squished into one little section here. Now, the big secret to all of this is that it all really is just the same. It's all additive damage. Now, there's 2 different sources of damage in this game. There's additive and multiplicative. We're going to cover all of that in just a couple minutes once we get through why attack power is so bad. So let's break this down. To show you an example of why attack power is so bad, we're going to look at my gear right here. So I have conceded on my amulet. This is going to give me huge multipliers. I have a massive amount of strength here. I have ranks of counteroffensive. I have Wrath of Berserker cooldown that's going to bring my ultimate up a lot faster than I should have it up. We're also going to be running Dire Whirlwind here. This is a huge bit of damage and critical strike chance. We get 100% critical strike chance and 100% multiplicative critical strike damage. Now, again, we'll talk about multiplicative versus additive in just a second. This also gives me ranks of Wallop. This is going to give me critical strike damage, strength, which is huge. So overall, a really great weapon for this build. Now, I'm going to put on 2 pieces of gear, and you're going to see something that's going to be actually really crazy and pretty mind-blowing. We're going to take a look at this axe right here. This has intercom. You're going to deal 26% increased damage, and you're going to triple that bonus if you're standing still. Now, I'm on a whirlwind build, so I'm not going to be standing still. I'm always going to be moving. This also has damage, critical strike damage, and then damage. Now, that was intentional. I put the damage on here just so I can show you exactly what I mean by this. And we're going to look at this amulet. This amulet right here is a 750 piece of gear. It has 1 temper on it, and it has an aspect on it that's going to give me increased damage for 7 seconds, and then no damage for 7 seconds after that. Just this amulet right here, no greater affixes, no masterworking whatsoever. I have 19,384. When we equip this amulet here, I go to 26,802. That is a massive difference for something that's going to do no damage whatsoever for my build. Now, you're going to watch this drop back down to 19,000. That's the aspect itself, but I still even then gain more attack power just based on this 1 piece of gear. Then, if I was to go ahead and put on this thing right here, which also, again, has no masterworking, deals nothing for my build right here because I'm going to be moving. I won't be able to take advantage of standing still. It's going to give me a little multiplier. I put this on. I go all the way up to 57,600 attack power. So if we go and we hit some of the training dummies. Now, if you've never been to the training grounds, you can pull up your map. You can either go to Hjövashad, you can go to the training grounds right here, or you can go to the Karas Bazaar, you can go to the training ground right here. The training ground is an incredibly useful tool if you want to see if something that you're going to be doing is going to give you more damage or if it's going to give you less damage. So we're going to set this up so you can see the difference in the damage that we're going to be doing with these 2 weapons that are going to be just a little bit different, and it's going to be pretty staggering how much different the damage is going to be based on these 2 weapons. So for the first damage test, we're going to be starting off with the weapons that I have not masterworked, but gave me higher attack power. We're going to just see how much damage we do based on just having these 2 on. We're seeing about 289 million damage. Seems like a pretty decent amount. Until we put the rest of them on. We're at 334 million, 370 million. So now we're going to swap to the other ones, and we're going to see exactly the difference that this is going to make having these on. That gives me less attack power. So as soon as we start going, we already are at 1.5 billion, 1.3 billion. So just by swapping around just a couple different items and going down in attack power, but having the right aspects, having the right tempers, having the right masterworking, that's given us a massive over 1 billion to our maximum damage increase. So 1.683 billion damage was the highest number we saw there. That's a huge jump from 300 million damage. That's why looking at attack power is really going to mess up how you're doing your builds. So it is an incredibly important thing not to focus on that. Now, tip number 2, we're going to talk about multiplicative versus additive damage. So what does that mean? If you were to look at this weapon right here, it has plus damage and it has plus damage. Anything that's going to be a temper that you're going to put onto your weapon is going to be additive damage. Anywhere that you see the plus, that means additive. And then anywhere that you see the X is going to be multiplicative. Okay, so here's your example. We have 100% critical strike chance, so every single time that we hit, we critically strike. Our critical strike damage is 1,000. If we were to take an affix like this one right here, where it says plus 100 critical strike damage, we were to add 100% to 1,000%, we get 1,100% increased critical strike damage. That's your additive damage. Now we take that same critical strike damage, that 1,000%, and we use something like the grandfather. This gives you 100x increased critical strike damage. That means that we're going to take 1,000 times 2. That's going to give us 2,000 critical strike damage instead of the 1,100 critical strike damage. This is where the huge benefit to having a multiplier and stacking as many multipliers as you can is going to be the way that you get to billions and trillions of damage instead of just putting anything on that's going to give you additive damage. For example, here, your strength, this is actually going to give you multiplicative skill damage. And now this is the same for any main stat on any class that you play. So if I was to take all of my emeralds here and put emeralds for critical strike damage, which is only an additive damage, into my weapons here, and then I put my runes into my armor, I'm actually taking away multiplicative damage to add in additive damage, which means I'm going to do less damage. So adding in that critical strike damage onto your weapons is actually hurting your damage versus where a lot of people would actually think that it is adding to their critical strike damage, because you would assume adding critical strike damage anywhere is going to make you hit harder during your critical strikes, which is actually not true with the way that the math is set up in this game. So now you have a handle on your additive versus multiplicative damage. What's next? Tip number 3 is going to be where to get your gear. Gearing can feel a little daunting in this game because it seems like you need to find all of the GA gear to get anything done in this game. Fortunately, that is a misconception. You do not need multiple GA gear to get anywhere in this game. At the very, very high ends of the pits, having multiple GA gear is going to definitely help a little bit, but in terms of damage output, it is only about 1 to 2 pit tiers going from all single GA gear to full GA gear. The math just works out that way because if you think about it, not every stat on your GA gear is going to give you additive damage. It's going to give you survivability, maybe more life, but it will not give you a ton of extra damage having all those GA gear. So the real end game is going to come a little bit later in the video. That's where you're going to start pushing your pits very, very far. We'll talk about where to find the gear and then what you're going to specifically look for and how to know what specific affixes you're going to want to look for in the GA gear, because there is always that one specific affix or one temper that will make your damage go from hitting from millions to trillions of damage. The first thing we're going to talk about is a seasonal trait. So if you're on a seasonal character, once you have completed your reputation board, you're going to get these amazing caches right here. As you continue to kill elites throughout the game, you're going to get more and more reputation that will keep on leveling up your board. So you're not done as soon as you finish the last bit and you get the spark. Once you've completed this here, that's when you continue to get your reputation. Now these here, these mystery greater archetype caches, they give you guaranteed ancestral gear. So we're going to grab just 3 of them right here, and then we're going to open those 3 and you can see what we're going to get. They're actually really amazing for gear, and I've gotten some insane gear just from opening these here. So as you can see, we got a ton of materials, over 100 forgotten souls, and a bunch of GA gear. Probably one of the best ways to get yourself some greater affix gear. I'm flying through Torment 4 with this build here. We have single GA gear, single GA gear, single GA gear, single GA, single GA, and single GA. You don't need all these multiple GAs to be able to get to Torment 4 and to smash everything there. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Infernal Hordes. These are actually a lot more important than you would think. There's a couple different reasons. When you have completed this, you're going to gain ether. That ether will allow you to purchase a cache. That cache is the equipment cache. It is something you should open up 100% of the time. By opening up that cache, you get guaranteed ancestral pieces of gear. Not only that, but it also is going to give you the scrolls of restoration. You will always get 2 scrolls per cache that you open. You're going to use these to restore all of the tempering charges if you have used up all of your tempering and you didn't get the one that you wanted. This is going to be a really great source of doing that, and I'll actually get to show you a little bit later on in the video what that looks like, so make sure you stick around because these are really important if you have a really great piece of gear and you bricked the first roll through. The next source of guaranteed greater affix gear is going to be from the Undercity. You're going to get your tributes of radiance, and by doing whisper caches, opening up chests, it's going to drop throughout the game. When you use these, it's going to give you guaranteed ancestral legendary gear. If you want to, you can actually come through and put your bargains on. You can get skill ranks. So if you're going to be doing the Undercity and you're looking for a class this season that needs ranks to core skills, so by adding this in, legendary armor will always possess at least one skill rank. So now you're going to have a bunch of chances to get a legendary piece of gear with plus ranks to skill, and hopefully that's going to be core skills if that's what you're looking for. Now, these are not guaranteed ancestral gear, but this is an incredibly great way to get yourself some gear. Running the escalating nightmare dungeons has been absolutely amazing. The drops are great, the equipment is great, and the materials are plentiful. Doing the equipment delve is going to give you a chance to get much better gear outside of just doing a regular escalating nightmare dungeon. So this will also be a really great option for you. If you're farming something like Opticite, you can run these equipment delve ones and try and get some strong rooms. Strong rooms are the biggest bang for your buck in terms of getting your Opticite. So this is a really great option for you right here. If you're on the expansion pack and you have mercenaries, this is going to be the next thing we're going to cover. You can come right to your mercenary screen. You go to your rapport. You can actually collect your pale marks. Now, I have gone through and I set my pale marks on the bottom here so I can see how many I have. You can do that just by going to stats and materials. You can select which ones you want to view. So I have pale marks selected, my gold, and then my obols. That's just what I like to run. So we have our pale marks. Then we're going to come over to the barter right here. Bartering is a really great source of getting gear and also getting material. So we have a free reset right here every single day. So even if you're running low on pale marks, you should still come over and get your free reset. So what you're going to be looking for, there's going to be a couple different things here. On the bottom, you're going to see these salvage caches. Always get these because that's a great source of forgotten souls. Then you can keep on refreshing. So we have 1, 2 different pieces of greater affix gear that we've gotten. It's also a really great place to come to level up your aspects. We've mastered damage, we've got our gear. Tip number 4 is going to be build guides. Now, I know that a lot of people out there do not like to run build guides. Following a build guide is not necessarily what this tip is. This tip is going to be using build guides to figure out how you want to play your characters, what might be working and what also might not be working. Sometimes there are items and there are mechanics in the game that don't actually interact with what you would think that they would interact with, or they just might not be working this season. That's just part of the game. So going through these build guides and figuring out what you need and what is going to be the best way to build your damage is a really great tool to get yourself set up for endgame and doing those big bonks. So how do build guides work? Well, every creator does theirs differently. I'm the official writer for the Barbarian class for Mobalytics, so all my builds will be there. You can find them in the description of this video. This is going to be a great breakdown of what you're going to be able to use and how you're going to use it. You can come down and you can actually go over to gear stats. This will show you what tempers to put on. This will also show you where to put your masterworking crits. Now, we're going to talk about all of that in just a second, tempering and masterworking and the crits. This will give you a breakdown of what runes you can use if you have the expansion pack, if you're on a seasonal class, where you can put all of the seasonal powers. It will also give you a complete breakdown of everything that you're going to need to know, that what is working and what's not working, why you would want to use something and why you don't want to use something. So following a build guide just to see how you want to build your character and what is going to be the best way to build it is also a really great tool that you don't want to miss out on. Make sure you check each of the variants on each of the builds so you can figure out what is going to be where. You can even see a full Paragon board setup and you can zoom in and you can zoom out. Build guides are going to be a really useful tool for you out there, and it's a really great way to build a community around getting these amazing builds, even if they're off-meta builds. Some of my favorite builds and some of the most fun builds to play are off-meta builds, because meta is built around pit pushing, which is really not a great way to figure out what the meta is for the season. Pit pushing builds sometimes are really bad for everything else other than the pits. So if the only thing that we're taking rankings from is the pits, then a lot of really fun builds are getting missed that are fast, that are strong, and that will carry you through everything that you're going to need to get through, except for maybe pit 115 or pit 130. So you found your build guide. Tip number 5, we talked about masterworking and tempering. These are both incredibly important aspects, and Masterworking is probably going to be the single-handed most increase to your damage in the game out there. Glyphs are great right at the beginning, but Masterworking is what is going to take you from 0 to hero. In the description of this video, I will have 2 complete guides to Masterworking and then Endgame Masterworking, because there is a difference. We're going to talk about just briefly here for what you want to do, but if you want a full breakdown, make sure you watch those 2 videos. For masterworking and tempering, you cannot masterwork before you temper. You have 2 different types of gear. You have your 750 and then you have your 800. You cannot put tempers onto unique gear, but you can masterwork unique gear right away. So how does this work? When we talked about your scrolls of restoration, we're going to get there too. This right now currently only has 1 temper. You can have up to 5 affixes. I have 1 free chance for each one of these. So the plus means that it's free. I haven't used anything yet. The 2 arrows means that I've put one on and that I've used it already. If I was to go through and I was to add one of these on, now, what tempers do you use? That's where your build guides are going to come in. For a build, let's say that I wanted to use something with Mighty Throw. Now, it's very, very straightforward. If I'm going to be playing Mighty Throw, I probably want to run Mighty Throw deals damage. So that's what I would probably go for. But if it's going to be something like your offhand here, now, this has Wallop on it. How do I know that I wanted to use Wallop? And is Wallop a good option for this build? That's where you're going to go into the build guide planner. You're going to go into your gear stats here. You're going to find your 2-handed slashing weapon. The 2-handed slashing weapon here is going to say that you want Wallop. That's how you know that Wallop is going to be the best choice for that build. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to find Wallop. I'm going to select the temper, and then we're just going to temper. You can skip the animation if you want. Now, the very first try, we got the maximum roll of Wallop. Now, if you don't know how to see what roll you got, your 2 to 4 range, make sure you check out the video on settings that you need to turn on. I have that, and I'll have that in the description of the video as well. We got our maximum roll, so now we can actually go through to your masterworking. So what happens if I went through and I used up every single one of my tempers? If you look at this piece of 750 gear on the bottom here, it says I have 0 out of 5. Now we're using this just as an example. I've done my Infernal Horde runs. I go to my consumables tab and I use one of the scrolls of restoration that I got from the Infernal Hordes. I can now reset all of the attempts on this piece of gear. If you have not used up all of your tempers, if you look right here, we didn't use up all of the temper tries. I can't use the scroll of restoration on that until I've used every single one of the attempts. Now I've used this, and now I get a full 5 out of 5 back, and I can go ahead and I can redo those. The only thing that you're going to run into that you need to watch out for, if you're using an amulet, you actually have 5 different categories that you can pick from with the amulet. So my amulet right now has 0 attempts left. If I was to use my scroll of restoration on this, and let's say that I wanted to pick a different category, normally I would have offensive, mobility, and resources available in the tempering categories, but I don't have it because I can only reset the tempers that I've used currently. I can only reset utilities and defensive stats. So if you're looking to completely change your tempers over from defensive to offensive, you cannot do it with the current amulet that you're using. So that's your tempering. Now we're going to look at your masterworking. This is where the real end game starts. And again, watch the video below to make sure that you learn all of the ins and outs and little tips and tricks. Masterworking is going to be your biggest increase to your damage. We're going to put our item in here. We're going to be looking for, and if I check my build guide here, I know that I want ranks to Wallop. How do I get ranks to Wallop specifically with the way that this is set up? So you can upgrade each time, and every single time you upgrade, you're going to gain 5% increase to your stats. That's really, really big. Every single click, except for number 4. Now, if you're masterworking, you can masterwork up to 12 out of 12. You can see the 2 out of 12 here. That's on 800 pieces of gear. Anything 750, if we do 1 here, can only go up to 8. Now, should you be masterworking 750 gear? Absolutely. And that'll be in the video that's in the description here, because it is actually very important that when you're first starting out your character, you do masterwork, and we'll talk about that in the other video. For now, we're going to go all the way up to rank 4. At rank 4, 1 affix will get a 25% increase. When we upgrade this one and we skip, this is going to give us +2 maximum life. That's not what we're looking for. Now, we're talking about endgame masterworking, so make sure you watch the 2 videos. I don't want that. So I can actually reset the masterworking right here. Now, if you're on a controller, because it does move, if I move The Masterworking reset goes away on the screen, but if you look down along the very bottom here, that's where your new Masterworking reset is going to be. So now we can reset the Masterworking, and then we're going to go back through. We're going to go back to rank 4, skip the animation, and see we get critical strike damage. Again, not what we wanted. This seems really great. You can reset your Masterworking. There is a catch. You lose all of the materials, every single one of them that you put into this. It also costs you 5 million gold, and it costs you materials to reset. So what's the strategy? In the very beginning, you take all of your gear to rank 4. Then you take all of your gear to rank 8, and then you go all of your gear to rank 12. When you salvage pieces of gear, you're going to get back 100% of the opposite that you put in. The other materials, you will not get back 100%. You're going to get back a percentage of that material that you put into it, but you still get back all of the opposite that you're going to need and that you've put into the gear. You want to make sure that you're masterworking everything that you have as high as it can go. Then you're going to start working on your masterworking crits. We want that to land on Wallop. So we're going to constantly reset, and then we're going to constantly wait until it gets to Wallop. So we get a rank 2 Wallop. Wallop is now +6 instead of being +4. Wallop is 5% increased damage multiplicative, which we learned about, every single rank that you get. So we've now added not just 20 multiplicative damage, but 30 multiplicative damage just from this temper. That's why we want to get all of our crits into this. Now, what a crit is, that's that 25%. We now have a single, that's why it's blue. What you're going to do next, you're going to continue to increase your ranks up to rank 8. Once we get to rank 8, we're going to hope that we get right into Wallop for this next one. If it doesn't go yellow, which is going to look like this right here. You have a yellow one right here. Now, on this piece of gear, I also didn't get my double masterworking into Wallop, but you want to get 2 into core skills. I got 2 into Wrath of the Berserker, which is what I was looking for. And if you do happen to get lucky and you get your 3 out of 3, which does take a lot of materials and sometimes a lot of time, this is going to look like this right here. It's going to be orange. Those are your different colors. This is where you're going to get the most damage out of your build. This is how you set up your character to do billions and trillions of damage. That's all I got for you today. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, make sure you share it with your friends. Thank you everybody for watching. I'm live every night. I'd love it if you stopped by, said hi, theory crafted with me. Catch you on the clip side.